Good morning. Welcome back to the Self-Love Show. I am your co-host, Dawn Light, and we are so grateful to have you here with us today for the Self-Love Show, right? We've been doing this for about 4 years, and it's just such a gift. My co-host is not with us today, Trish, but she is so with us in spirit, and we send her so much love and light. She's in school and doing so good in Berkeley, so just send her light today. We have an amazing guest. I will introduce our guest in 1 minute. But if you're new to the Self Love Show, we're so happy you're tuning in with us. And we just want to say go check out all our other platforms. We're everywhere. We're on the podcast and everywhere you might want to find us, especially the YouTube. And like, share, and subscribe because it really matters to get the message of self love out to the world. And in case you don't know, there's tons and tons of great content in the background for the last 4 years. And so I just want to serve you and give you as much amazing content as possible to your exploration of deepening your relationship with yourself, spirit, and our life and self-love, right? And so love is our foundation. And we want to just spread the message of loving and how to have love in our relationships and better our relationships, right? Because our relationships are our life. And that means our love life, our work relationships, in every fashion, we have relationships. So why not have the deepest, richest, most rewarding relationships we can? And so self love is the key ingredient to that. And so we have an amazing guest today. I'm so stoked to introduce her. She's been on before. Her name is Susan Snow, and she's just lovely. And her message is very profound. She comes with a very potent message. And so, really grateful to introduce you, Susan. Susan's little short bio, I'll read here. It says, The Other Side of the Gun, Finding the Importance of Mental Health, Recovery, and Resiliency Through Trauma and Loss with Susan Snow. Susan will teach on the importance of mental health, recovery, and healing tools used to find healing from trauma and loss. Susan Snow is an author, speaker, and resiliency coach. She is the daughter of a LA police detective, Thomas C. Williams, who was ambushed and killed on October 31st, 1985. Sorry for your loss. Susan wrote her personal memoir that chronicles her journey through the trauma of losing her dad to murder. Her book, The Other Side of the Gun, My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency, was born out of her wanting to help others in their healing journey through trauma and loss. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you for having me again.
Yay.
It's
Super
awesome to be here. Yeah.
Well, your story is a really potent one, and it's very impactful to those that have had experiences. You know, I come from a very traumatic background as well. So, when we have a traumatic experience like your story, it dysregulates every part of our life, and it's so potent that you've been able to really pull from the support of spirit and all around you to really find the heart of like how can I make impact with this really just dysregulating situation that dysregulated my whole reality for so long. And like you've come to the other side, and now you have this beautiful book, and you're a speaker, and you're an author, and so many good things out of it, right? So many blessings have come for you out of this really tragic thing. And you're like the beacon of light for those that are just maybe experiencing for the first time something. And I don't wish that on anyone, but the reality is we're humaning together, and people have very traumatic things come their way, sometimes unexpectedly. And I don't wish that on anyone. And I know that the tools you carry speak loudly to how to navigate this territory. So tell us more about, like, for those that are tuning in new and first time here, kind of just give us a little context about you, your journey, and, where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my journey started when I was 17 years old, and it was in the mid 80s. So back then, there were no talks about mental health. There were no resources for kids who have gone through trauma. And they knew very little back then. PTSD was known as shell shock. So basically, um, it was understood that was for military who were coming back from war. Um, so I actually grew up a cop's daughter. And when I was little, when I was younger, my dad was a street cop. So there was always that feeling of, oh my goodness, dad could get hurt. Never anything worse came into my head. But as I got older, he became a detective. Sorry, that was your your microphone. Um, so I had a false sense of security, and I thought nothing bad could happen to him. He was a detective, therefore he did his investigation after the fact, so he wasn't involved in the ongoing crime. Um, but that false sense of security ended on October 31st of 1985, and it was Halloween night. Typical teenager, I was going to a party. I was gonna go to a Halloween party. Dad had already said no, because it was a school night, but I was bound and determined. And the plan was that he was gonna go pick up my brother from school, my mom would come home, and as soon as both of them were in the house, I was gonna do everything in my power to, manipulate them into letting me go to this party. However, my mom got home first, and she was getting out of her costume, and I was trying to get into mine, and the phone rang in the house, and the phones were attached to the wall. So I jumped out of my room and ran down the hall and picked up the phone, and um, it wasn't for me. It was a lady from my brother's school, and all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. So I saw my mom the corner of my eye, and I handed her the phone immediately. And I watched her. I watched her body language change. Her state changed, her body language changed. Um, and I knew it was bad. And she got off the phone and said, "We're going to the school." So we got in the car. Not one of us spoke a word to each other. It was about 10 minutes to the school. When we got to the school, the way the school is set up is there is a driveway or a parking lot in the middle of the school. So the kids at after school care, they come out the back side of the school. So when we got to the school, we parked in the parking lot, and then we headed towards the back of the school. And I remember police officers coming my way, and they had tears in their eyes, and they wouldn't look up at us. They knew who we were, but they wouldn't look at us. And as we kept going, I just saw the sky was so lit up, and it was from the lights of the police cars. And then there was an ambulance that was sitting in the middle of the street, just still. And both my mom and I caught my dad's truck in our peripheral vision and started to go towards the truck quickly. We realized there was glass everywhere, and as we rounded the corner, there he was, and he was covered up with a white sheet. And I could hear my mom screaming, but me as a kid just stood in the street, and I couldn't comprehend. Like, I knew what I was looking at, but I couldn't comprehend what I was looking at. Um, what I was concentrating on was the ambulance. Why wasn't anyone helping him? Um, and then we got ushered out of there pretty quickly and went to an office. And I sat down in the office, and my mom got pulled aside, I believe, by a couple of detectives who wanted to talk to her. And by that time, I was just reeling. I was just my head was swirling. I didn't know where my brother was. He was 6 at the time. I didn't know where he was. I didn't know if he was at a hospital. I didn't know if he was hurt. I didn't know what he saw. And I was sitting there just trying to navigate all of this. And there were 2 ladies in the office and they were speaking. And one of them said that Mr. Williams is deceased. And that's when my world cracked. All of me, every ounce of me wanted to get off that chair and run as far as I could away from this nightmare. But my body was not capable. My legs felt like cement. And my mom came back and she said, "I'm sending you with a neighbor." And even though part of me wanted to run out of there as fast as I could, the other part of me was a kid. And I needed to stay with my family unit. You know, I needed to be with my brother. I needed to be with my mother. But I didn't get that opportunity. So I really had to navigate all of this on my own.
Oh my gosh, that is the hardest, thing to navigate when you're that young. Like you were young,
Yep.
you're a teenager.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry you had to go through this so young. What a catalyst so quickly for you to become an adult so dang fast and navigate, not only be so confused in your own world, but the trauma of actually seeing your dad that way.
Yep.
And no one there really helping you to understand what was going on. It was just so much chaos going on.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry that you had to experience it that way. And
Yeah. And I don't get me wrong, like, I don't blame my mom. It was very chaotic. But her choice changed my mindset, and I felt like I wasn't important. And, you know, and little did I know that that would create abandonment issues for me. Um, but again, when I talk about the 80s and not having any support as a kid, um, it was hard because there wasn't, people didn't know what to say, right? This was an assassination. My dad had testified that day, and the man who took him was on trial, and he was out on bail and gave him an opportunity.
my gosh.
So, and we, unbeknownst to us, we were in danger. So that night, my entire world completely changed because even my own neighborhood used to be really, really quiet. Now was filled with police cars. You could hear the helicopters above, circling. And people in my house that I didn't know,
Wow.
like dignitaries, chief of police, whatever, because this was in the annals of LAPD. It was the first officer to be assassinated.
Wow.
And the fact that my dad, his last act here on earth was to save my brother. He told my brother to duck down in the truck because he knew what was coming. And that really made an impact on everyone, whether law enforcement or not. It was just tragic. And the media was on it immediately. It was a big story, and so they ate it up. And that was a part of it. I was not able to privately grieve
Mhm. Yeah.
because, it was just I struggled a lot. And not knowing that I had PTSD at the time, but having all of the things that come with it, such as the extreme depression. And I longed to be with my dad, no matter what the cost was. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know it was called suicidal ideation. I had anxiety and panic attacks, and my sense of security was gone. My dad was my safety net, you know, and he was my hero and my best friend. And it was it, you know, so I had to navigate all of that. And my mom and I had a very complicated relationship back then too, which, you know, most girls and their moms do. Ours was just a little bit more tipped a little more. Um, and so it just, you know, and my boyfriend at the time, who I'm now married to, um, he was 19 and we had only been dating 3 months.
Wow.
And most guys would have said, bye-bye, I'm out. This is too much. But he stuck it out because I think he knew my mom was going to kind of turtle and go into herself, and I was going to be left in the wind, so to speak. So he stuck it out. He knew I needed a friend. And that's exactly what he did, you know. So here, 2 kids trying to figure out how to deal with all of these things, all of this complication, not just the trauma of the night, but everything that moved forward from there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is such a pivotal moment in your life. Like everything,
Mhm.
everything in your whole reality, like your whole reality is dysregulated from that
Yeah,
day forward. And
totally.
and it would make sense that you would feel, a sense of abandonment because your mom just didn't know how to cope.
Mhm.
She was handling her own grief and her own, and it doesn't it's so hard when we have a parent or a loved one, not be able to cope with our reality. And then it feels like that sense of abandonment. But that sense of abandonment on a soul level, you came in with that core lesson this lifetime. You chose it and you took embodiment to have this experience as a family unit together.
Mhm.
And there was agreements made on a soul level between you guys, and ultimately your purpose is woven into this now. And so just like I can speak about my father was my abuser and my hardest relationship, and now he's crossed over, and through my journey of graduate school and my own work, it it he it's a part of my purpose. And
Mhm.
my story, similar to you, I didn't lose my dad through murder, but it was very, very tumultuous and hard and tragic and all the things in my
Of
own.
course. Yep.
And so oftentimes our greatest losses transform us to become the hero of our own story and journey, which I know you have now through, the previous show you were on. You shared greatly about how this has transformed you. And I'm so proud of you to
Thank
and
you.
acknowledge the inner work that it's taken to really reclaim yourself from this really tough experience of, when we're lost in this swirl of PTSD and trauma. Sometimes we just can't see what's the easiest next step to move
Right.
forward. And and so it's like, tell us a little bit about how did you manage, how did you overcome, what was the beginning of like your healing journey around, because it sounds like your boyfriend was so supportive and still is because he's your husband. But gosh, you're so young. So what really was the pivotal moment of like where you started on the healing journey from this changing life changing circumstance?
Oh gosh. So a second traumatic experience actually. And now, so for 14 years, I had had a bad experience with a therapist early on and was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life, but I was still a hot mess. um, I was really good at wearing my emotional mask, because people kept saying, oh, you're so strong and you're so brave and you're going to be fine. And, and so that's what I wore. Like anytime anything came up that I was triggered, I hate that word, but when I was triggered, then I would put that mask on. Like, I'm fine. And, this isn't going to affect me, but it did. 14 years later, I had married that boyfriend and we had 2 kids and we left Southern California and moved to Colorado. I was working very close to Littleton, Colorado, and as a hairdresser. And on April 20th of 1999, I was working and took a break and went into the back room and turned on the TV. And it was the coverage all over the TV about the Columbine school shootings. And everybody obviously had a reaction to it, but my reaction was nothing I was prepared for. I started to sweat. I started having, like, I could feel the tingling in my fingers. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I turned bright white. I was seeing flashbacks because on the TV, I was seeing the police officers, the ambulance. It was a school. And all of this I'm watching. And my colleagues, I didn't tell them my story. They had no idea. So they had no idea what was happening to me. And they knew I was too young to have kids that go to the high school. And I didn't live in the area. So they were very confused, as was I, as to why I was having this visceral reaction. And, but I did what I always did. And I put my mask back on, finished my day. But the minute I walked through those doors to go home, all of the things came flooding back. All of it. The suicidal ideation, the depression, the anxiety, like everything. And I try to fight it, but at this point I'm scared because I have 2 kids and I don't want to leave them. But at the same time, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And then my husband met me at the door and he said, this was like a couple days in, and he said, you have 2 choices. You either get help or I'm putting you in a hospital today. And once again, he was right. And I went to the doctor. I said, okay, I had to really dig deep and go, okay, scary as it is, I need help. So I went to the doctor, a regular physician, and he put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a card for a therapist. And I laughed in his face because I said, 14 years ago, this therapist couldn't fix me. What makes you think this person's going to do it? And he said, you have no choice. So I did. I went to her and it was the best day of my life because what I realized was that she specialized in severe trauma and really understood PTSD. So when I explained it to her, what I had gone through at 17 and then currently, she was like, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you have PTSD. And I kind of sat back in the chair. I was like, what? I didn't go to war. I'm not in the military. And she said, no. She said, Susan, anyone who has gone through trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to know is that PTSD does not go away. It's something you learn to manage. Mm-hmm. And that was the pivot. That was what I needed because that was the time where I realized, oh my God, finally, there's someone who is going to be able to guide me on this journey and help me heal and give me the tools to be able to handle all of the things that come up,
Mm-hmm.
because I have been in fight or flight for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had hope. I was like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, like, the sky opened up and rainbow shot out, because I finally was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. This, I can heal from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was the best day of my life. That was the beginning of my journey. And
Amazing.
she was smart too, because she knew I was a hot mess express. Like, there were things that she was going to have to deal with one by one by one. So
What you're speaking of is exactly what I do in my own practice with people, is one by one by one deal with memories and imprints, because it's stuck emotional energy. It's stuck unresolved material from previous timelines that we've lived and other places in our consciousness. And so it's really helping unclog the pipeline that's blocking the perceptual filter, because it's affecting how we see our relationships and how
absolutely.
we feel our relationships in our life. And sometimes people cannot move forward from a traumatic event. And it's because there's a part of them that's just like, I can't feel that again. And they're afraid to, or stuck in it, or like you, fight or flight. And I lived in fight or flight for a majority of my life, thinking I was doing healing, but really I hadn't even scratched the surface.
Right.
And, my healing was a very long, long process, but I had a lot of, like you, PTSD, because I had many, many traumatic things occur in my childhood, and it kept me stuck. And so it's very normal if you're experiencing, for our viewers and listeners, if you're experiencing feeling stuck in your trauma pattern, it's not wrong or bad. Like, don't let go of shaming yourself for the event occurring, and that you are still struggling through it, if you are. And just reach out. We're a voice and a beacon of hope here in this show, to let you know that there's lots of modalities, there's lots of ways to find your healing, and it's possible for you.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. And that's the important thing, is that people need to understand they're not alone. And even if, like, for myself personally, even though as a kid, I felt like I didn't have an adult that helped me navigate this, if you don't have the proper people around you, you have the power to find those people.
mhm,
And they are out there, and they are there to help you and guide you. And I think that it's very important for you to know that you're not alone, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And on those days, you just have to give yourself grace, because if you don't, that is just a part of the healing. Um, you've been through enough as it is, and then to have a bad day and then guilt yourself into that bad day is not going to help, right? It's going to move you a little bit backwards. I think, over and above all of the other work that I did as far as the modalities, one of the things that I think that is the most powerful in your world is forgiveness. Now, there is a lot of um, there's a lot of pushback when it comes to forgiveness, because some people might think that if I forgive this person or this thing that hurt me, um, that I'm letting them off the hook, that I'm forgetting, I'm making light of the situation or whatever it is. And I'm going to tell you from my own experience, it's the total opposite. So when I chose to forgive these men that took my dad, there was multiple men. Um, when I chose to forgive them, I looked at it this way. I looked at it as I am forgiving them for me so that I'm not holding on to the things that will destroy my life past this traumatic event. So I was forgiving them to say to them in the universe, you can't hurt me anymore. I'm stronger than you are. And I'm taking my power back. So I am taking my power back. I am going to heal from this. And you are still stuck the way you are, right? And so whatever traumatic experience, thing, person, whatever that hurt you, when you when you learn to forgive, and it takes time. It takes time, and everybody, you know when you're ready, right? I'm not going to say go out and forgive someone or whatever. It takes time, and you will know when you're ready. You will know it. But what I looked at is this. My mom still to this day walks around with so much hatred and so much pain and so much. And for me, that's giving her power back to these men. So for me, I did the opposite. I said, you're not going to hurt me anymore. I'm not going to allow it. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to heal from this. And that is why I forgave.
Beautiful. Forgiveness is such a key ingredient. What you're speaking about is so, so important. And it's the foundation of like many, many practices I offer in my own work with clients. And I find, because forgiveness is the heart of the work, really. But it takes time, like you said, to get to it. And I find that what I help people do is I help them unravel all around the heart of the forgiveness, because what's happening and taking place is when there is a very potent experience that's come into your life, and there's a karmic imprint in it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this material, unresolved emotional material that's all around it, and you have to slowly untangle all of it so that the mind, the soul can really understand what is the learning in all of this. And that's why people don't just resonate real quick with forgiveness, is because there's more to the experience
It's complicated.
around all of it, because you can't just, and this was the reason why I struggled forever, is because as much as I wanted to forgive my dad for all the tragic things that were done in my family and done to my family in front of my eyes and done to me and all the things, it was just not available. I had no connection point as a child to, and as much as I didn't want to carry the burden, because I carried the burden of those experiences and would rehash them in my unconscious. Like it was just constantly living inside of me. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was drawing and attracting, like an attractor field, like people, circumstances, and places, even although I was no longer that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old that was being abused. I was like the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old, but I was still drawing and attracting the same people,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the same frequency and signature of the unhealed part of me. And
Right.
so that's really what the heart of the work is to get in there and really understand what's going on and what those, and help someone source back to that moment without them feeling like they're reliving it, because you only live it once. That's the truth. And you have to remind yourself you only live the trauma one time.
Right.
Even though the memory and the imprint is there, you can work with it and rewire it. And
Yep.
that's the beauty of it. And so forgiveness is the heart of the work, but we have to understand all the pieces of it before we can fully let it go.
Absolutely. And you're right. That's a part of the work.
Yeah.
And I speak a lot about fear, because fear holds us back from every single thing. And a lot of people that I talk to that have gone through trauma, they're fearful of reliving it. You're reliving it in your head and you're not reliving it physically, right? But it's still scary. And so for me, I mean, even writing my book was terrifying because I was putting myself out there, like raw, authentically. I had to tell my story wholeheartedly. And in doing that, I had to tell my mom's story as well. Um, and I had, and I speak about my husband and something we went through. And there was a lot of fear around my safety. Putting myself out there, is there going to be retaliation, right? But what I realized in writing my book is I found, and we talk about the purpose, my purpose is to inspire and give people hope in healing. And so what I did every time I found that fear coming up and welling up inside of me, I would think of the faces. I would see the faces of the people that are out there that need to hear my words, my message. And I concentrated on that. So I tell people, whatever that purpose is for you, whether it's your child, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a partner, whether it's your like a dream job that you just want so badly, but everything in your personal has kept you back from it, right? Whatever that purpose is, to concentrate on that every time those fears pop up, because that is what's going to drive you. We call it the big why. We call it the purpose. We call it, whatever you believe in or what you need. Some people think of it as faith, right? And a spirituality or whatever. But it's still you're able to drive towards it, and I have my tagline, bulldoze your fear, because you have to bulldoze through those feelings of fear and keep moving forward. And so, you know, that's what kept me. It took me 4.5 years to write my book.
Amazing. Tell us a little more. I'm going to spotlight you. I want you to weave in your amazing magical thing you wanted to share with me before the show
Oh,
through the
yeah.
story
Mhm.
of purpose, because after all, like, all of this has occurred so that you can stand forward in your purpose, and you are. And good job, good work. It's okay if it takes 4 years to write a book. You did it, and that's what matters. So
Yeah.
tell us a little more. I'm going to spotlight you for a moment.
Oh my gosh. So I actually have a couple of stories. Um, and I don't know if I told you this the last time, maybe. So there's a couple of stories. One is last year, in July, I went back to Southern California and I was there with my husband and we were doing a book signing and I had a speaking engagement. And before we left, I had told my husband we need to go to the cemetery and visit dad. So we did. And as I was sitting on the grass next to his marker, um, something in me told me that I needed to go back to that school. Now, understand, anytime I went back to that school, all of that stress and anxiety and panic would set in, and I just couldn't go anywhere near it. But something told me, it was probably my dad, told me to go to the school. So, and I knew that there was a special placard. All of LAPD put street sign placards on the streets where officers were killed in the line of duty. But my dad's was in the front of the school. It wasn't in the back of the school where he was killed. So that was my goal. My goal was to go see that placard and take pictures with it and everything. So I was driving. So we drove to the school, and instead of having all those things happen to me, all of those panicking, anxiety ridden thoughts, I felt peaceful. And I was able to look at that placard, and I was able to take pictures with that placard. And as I was stood there looking at it, something told me, actually, something asked me how far I could go. So, how far can I push myself? And I said, I know what I'm going to do. And I told my husband, we have one more place to go. And he was like, okay, well, my plan was to go back to the street. So I got in the car, he got in the car, we drove up the street. We started to turn right onto the street that connects the front of the school and the back of the school. And my husband, his eyes got really big. And he was like, what are we doing? And I said, just give me a minute. And I drove up, I made a right onto the street where my dad was killed. I drove up the street, I turned the car around, and I parked. And I started to describe everything I saw that night to my husband, where my dad's truck was, where the ambulance was, where the police officers were, like everything. And the craziest part of this is that there was not 1 ounce of my body that was triggered, that was anxious, that was, my stomach wasn't sick. Like, I absolutely felt at peace. And my husband and I looked at each other and we were like, I cannot believe we're doing this right now. And especially together. It was a moment where I knew that all of the work that I did and all of the pain that I felt was worth it. And, I hear this a lot where people go, oh, I could never go back to those places, or I could never. You don't know what you're capable of when you do the work. So don't do that to yourself, because I don't have special powers. Like, I'm not, like, I don't have special strength. Like, we all have it within ourselves. The second one I was going to tell you before the show started was, I was just in Vegas last week and I spoke. And where I spoke was a theater. And most of the theaters were really quiet. The theater that I was speaking in, it was just very, very quiet in there. The speaker ahead of me spoke, and you could just hear the speaker and nothing else on the outside at all. And so when I went up and I started to speak, there's a part where I talk about the sirens, and or the police cars and the lights and all of that. And in the background, you could hear a siren out of that very quiet theater. So after I spoke, several people came up to me and said, your dad was here. Did you hear? I mean, people were, they were excited. They were like, oh my gosh, did you hear the siren? Like, what? That was nuts. Like, your dad was here. I said, yeah, my dad was probably here. He likes to make a splash. What can I say? But it just, it just reiterates that I am doing the work. I am continuing his legacy in a different way. And that my message of hope is what I need to get out. The message of taking care of your mental health always, and doing the work. And the work is not easy, folks. It just isn't. I'm not going to candy coat it. It's not easy. But when you have someone, a coach or a professional therapist or whatever, that is not just trauma informed, but trauma competent, and and that they know how to guide you and that you're able to be vulnerable because, folks, vulnerability has to happen. You have to be all in if you really want to heal.
Very true. Thank you for
So,
that. That's
yeah.
so potent. It's so true. Vulnerability is the gateway to our loving and connection to spirit. And spirit really loves when we're vulnerable because it's the opportunity to really be in the heart of our life and feel embodied in our experience. And so when I work with clients, it's really a big piece, is because a lot of people can feel vulnerable in one area of their life, but then have a complete disconnect in other areas. And it's really learning to bring that vulnerability in all the other places where it's been scary. And that
Mhm.
has to do with trauma, usually, because they've been told it's wrong or bad, or they don't feel safe, or just like you, where you learn to wear a mask. And so, it's so good that you don't feel that any longer and you can really just be your authentic self. And that's the
Mhm.
goal, is working with the trauma pieces in our own life where we can really uncover that authentic expression and not feel like we have to hide in any part of our life any longer, or
Mhm.
run from any piece of our life any longer because it felt so. And that's what's natural, is we're hardwired as humans
Mhm.
to go towards pleasure and away from pain. So that's in our hardwiring as a human, but we're learning to accept our divinity and our humanity at the same time. And so what's really important is to learn, it's a learned skill to learn to lean in where it feels uncomfortable and actually
Mhm.
forward in our strength inside ourselves. And this is a learned skill, and why it's so important to have a coach and have support, because it's something that's not taught in our family
Mhm.
system, most families. And it is a learned skill. So it's really important to give yourself the opportunity that yes, you can overcome any traumatic history, whatever it may have been,
Mhm.
and give yourself
Exactly.
the opportunity to stretch past it and learn new actual tools, resources, and skills to be able to embody your experience, the fullness. And just like you, Susan, I'll speak about, when I finally saw my father, like he was close to his deathbed, but I had been through graduate school. He was my relationship project for 2 years. I worked my process around every traumatic event I ever experienced with him, because that was my liberation for myself.
Yep.
I was doing it for my dad, but I was also doing it for me, and I was doing it
Yeah.
in service to my relationships with my husband and my son. And when I saw my dad, like, spirit has such a powerful way of speaking to us. When I walked through the door for the first time to see him in the hospital bed, the TV had on it a Maury Povich show, or one of those shows. I don't know who it was, but it said in giant letters, child abuse, soon as I walked through the door. And he was looking, but he wasn't aware of that moment like I was. And my stepmom
Mhm.
room, not aware. But I was like, wow, that was clearly for me. And in that moment, I had a full body check in with myself. And I was like, wow, I feel so complete with the story of what this has been in my life, that there's not even an ounce of feeling in watching his eyes, my father's eyes, and seeing the amount of suffering he had in his body and where he was, that I had a full body experience of feeling like this is complete between us.
Mhm.
It was a full, I just felt it so complete
Mhm.
inside myself. There was no need to hash it over it. There was no need to say any more words about it. There was no need. It felt solidly like on a soul line. I felt like a check mark, like soul line complete. Like we are complete. And
Yep.
I had never in my life, that was one of the most profound moments after working my process for 2 years straight.
Mhm.
Every single trio process, every single learning so many deep, profound tools and resources that I share with my own clients.
Mhm.
It excavated every piece of the unresolved material, and even the places inside myself, because I didn't have a healed voice. You're hearing my very healed voice self come forward in the show, and all that I give is because I didn't know how to stand forward in my strength and in my gifts and actually express them verbally and express from my heart and express vulnerably and share intimately. Wasn't taught that. And in fact, I didn't have a voice. I was always told, sit down, shut up as a child. And so there was a lot of places that I just didn't own my power or my light. And now I do. And so
Yeah.
I'm sharing this as the gift of you can overcome anything that's been traumatic in your life. We both share this commonality in our stories, and I just commend you. I know that it's not easy to go through the depths of trauma and how to come out the other end shining bright, right? And but we all, this is the gift of it in our life. And when you've had a trauma, God bless you. God bless your journey. God bless your healing. And just look at this beautiful soul here that's on this show with me. She is a radiant example of how to come out the other end of something that just is devastating. And you don't know where your life is going, and everything doesn't feel the same, and nor can it ever go back to the same.
Right.
And yet, there is a path for you, and you just got to follow the breadcrumb trail that God is giving you, Spirit is giving you, whatever you want to call all
Yep.
the the one that has the many, 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 many names for
Yeah.
eons. It's breathing our life force. It's giving us our breath. Our whole life is this, and it's in service to love. It's in service to greater depths of loving and kindness, and blessings upon blessings come out of tragic experiences. And so I just lift you and praise you and acknowledge you for, A, writing a book when it was the hardest thing you could possibly do, and B, having the bravery to get on a stage and share your intimate story and give voice to, so many faces, so many people, so many lives touched by saying, if I can do it, you can do it. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's I think, when I talk to people that have been through stuff and they have done their healing, I feel like once you've gotten to a certain point, it's almost like the next step is to help others.
Mhm.
I feel like that's kind of what we're given. And I feel like it's not a responsibility, it's a purpose. And I tell people things like, my purpose was in my dad's death. And some people are like, whoa, what? How could you say that? Right. But it is because I gleaned from all of the lessons um, of, healing, and really, I have a chapter in my book called Rose Colored Glasses, because I was in fight or flight, is because I couldn't see things clearly, or I saw things the way I wanted to see things. um, it allowed me to be taken advantage of, or continually abused, or stay in a toxic relationship, like with my mother, for instance. And now that I've done all this healing, I've realized that it doesn't serve me to stay in a toxic relationship. My mother and I are no longer we're no contact at this point. And that was her doing, not my doing. But that was what I had to throw out there to the universe is, I'm putting this book out, and it's either going to do one thing or another thing. And I had to be able to be okay with that.
Mhm.
Um, and so it blew up our relationship, and that is the way it was supposed to happen. And I'm okay with that. So when you talk about your dad, it's like she's older, and and I'm no contact with her, but I feel at peace about it.
Mhm.
I'm not I don't feel guilty. I don't feel like I used to. I used to feel shame and guilt and all the things because I was healing and she was not. I felt like I had an obligation to help her heal.
Mhm.
But you can't heal someone else. They have to choose to heal themselves. And if they don't, and it is a toxic relationship, then you need to figure out, is that serving you
We
or
really have to give
is it not? Yeah.
yeah, we really have to give everyone the dignity of their own experience and process. And sometimes someone's timeline of consciousness and growth in the way we're growing doesn't
Mhm.
match ours, and it's
Right.
okay. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
wrong or
okay.
it's
You
not
don't
wrong or
have
bad.
to
Yeah, that
yeah, it's
exactly.
not black and white, but it's definitely, I tell people all the time, you are the priority, right? Your healing is the priority. It is not the priority of your therapist. It is the priority of you.
Mhm.
Um, and you can't make someone else heal so that you can feel better.
Yeah, finish your sentence there. Yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying. It is so true. We have to do it for ourselves, and our own personal liberation and freedom is choosing ourselves. And
Mhm.
ultimately, in doing that, it sounds like it would be selfish, but it's actually doing an honor of your own body, beautiful temple. And then when we honor ourselves, we are honoring of everyone else, and that's the beautiful gift that comes out of it. And so, bless your journey, bless your heart, bless your relationship with your mother. Even if it's at a distance, you can still send her light and loving.
Mhm.
It's so good that you found that sense of peace inside of yourself, and that's what matters.
Absolutely.
And
So
tell us about, we're wrapping up at the end of the show, so tell us how we can find you. I've already posted in your in the links, so you can go to her website, but tell us how we can find you, and also what you're offering right now.
So I am, you can find my book on Amazon. It's in paperback form or Kindle. If you're on Kindle Unlimited, you can actually read the book for free. I am working on, and I think I told you this before, but I swear I am. I'm working on the audiobook. So that will come out pretty soon, hopefully. Um, as far as social media, you can find me on Instagram. It's my name. It's Susan_Snow1. And my website is susansnowspeaks.com. That'll give you information on the book. It'll also give you information on my speaking. Um, and as far as my coaching, I am running a deal right now with a 40-minute, just kind of an introductory session, and to see if we're a good fit or not. But even if you just want to chat, um, if you just need a little guidance or a little support, um, you can use that 40 minutes to do that. And yeah, that's about it.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah,
You're lovely. Bless your life. Bless your speaking events. May
thank
they
you.
come in, may they flood in for you, and you get to spread your message far and wide. And just excited for your growth path here, and to be on the other side and have a loving relationship and have your wholeness intact is everything. And so I really feel, sense, and hear that in you, and acknowledge you for that. And it's
Thank
just
you.
it's a long road sometimes, but it is so freaking worth it on every level. And
It is.
I feel the
It
same
is.
in my life.
Yeah, I'm not done. Like, I won't be done evolving until I leave this earth, but
Absolutely.
it's definitely from where I was to where I am now is just a completely different person.
Yes.
But again, my drive is not my own. It's something bigger and higher, and the message is the most important, right? To get it out there and just make sure that people understand that, you're not alone.
You're not alone. Exactly. Beautiful. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you.
For those viewers, you can just go check out the links in the comments. And she said, so say your website one more time. It's Susan
It's
under
Susan. Yeah. Well, my Instagram is Susan_Snow1. And then my website is susansnowspeaks.com.
Great. Woohoo. Oh, thank you for tuning in today for those viewers. And thank you again, Susan. You're just lovely. Bless
Thank
your
you.
life. So appreciate you being with us today. And thank you so much for, the muse that helped us birth the Self-Love Show, which is Scott Katamas and Love Coach Academy, Global Peace Tribe. We're so grateful for you and our presence in our life. And, I'm so grateful for Trish Wright. Love you so much. And all our viewers that have been with us for the 4 years, and our amazing virtual assistant team that supports us on the back end. We love you. Thank you so much, Roy and Russell. And just such the gift to be able to give this gift of the show weekly. We're so appreciative. It's a labor of love. And yeah, bless your life this week. I hope you have an amazing week. I hope you tap into your own sense of purpose, because that was the higher message in our show today. And we'll see you next week. So thank you so much. See you
Thank
soon.
you.